All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Happy Earth Day. It's certainly a different Earth Day, this 50th anniversary of celebrating Earth Day. And thank you everyone for joining us. This is Seneca Park Zoo's Earth Day to You. This is our 3 p.m. program. And we're so grateful that you've become a part of Earth Day with us. You know, before the world turned upside down, we had great plans for celebrating Earth Day this month with you in person. And instead, we're celebrating it in a very different way, but finding ways to still connect people to Earth Day. So thanks for joining us. I want to thank Diamond Packaging. They've been our sponsor of Earth Day for a number of years now, providing saplings for the public to take home. We also have some Earth Day to You packages that are still available through our zoo shop. And if you want to go to senecaparkzoo.org, you'll find those baskets available. You can order them through 10 o'clock tonight for pickup, touchless pickup on Sunday. Also, Diamond Packaging has been such a great sponsor. I would be remiss if I didn't mention they also won our Environmental Innovation Award in the large business category a couple of years ago. And as of today, at this moment, we have now opened the nominations for the 2020 Environmental Innovation Awards. So if you have someone in mind, or a company, small or large, a nonprofit, a person, a youth who's doing really great work in the environmental sector, please take a moment to go to senecaparkzoo.org/innovation and nominate somebody for the 2020 awards. So thank you again for joining us for Earth Day. I'm Pamela Reed Sanchez. I'm the president and CEO of the Seneca Park Zoo Society, and I'm really, really excited and proud to have our friend Drew Lanham join us this afternoon. Drew is an endowed chair as alumni distinguished professor at Clemson University. He's an author, poet, wildlife biologist, and ecologist. You may know him from 9 Rules of the Black Birder. Last year, Drew was awarded the National Audubon Society's Dan W. Lufkin Prize for Environmental Leadership, which is quite a coup. I could probably use the next 20 minutes to state all of the awards and accolades that Drew has deservedly received, but we don't have time for that. But I will say, you know, we first met Drew in September of 2016 when his book, The Home Place, was published. And we were lucky enough to be the first stop for him on his book tour. And since that time, that book has won numerous awards, including just last week being named by the Chronicle of Higher Education as one of the top 10 most important books of the last decade. So we're really, really proud to have Drew join us today. And Drew, just so the audience can see you, say a word or two.
Hi, Pamela. Thanks for having me here for Earth Day, for bringing this virtual gathering together. It's unfortunate that I'm not able to be up there, or we're not able to gather as we would on this 50th anniversary. But because of the situation, we're able to gather virtually. So I'm looking forward to some great conversations about conservation.
Yeah, you know, it strikes me that this is actually a year in which we're being much kinder to the earth on Earth Day, because we're not moving around and using our vehicles and traveling and all of that. So Drew, in the last day or so, as I prepared for this conversation, and people should know, Drew asked not to receive questions in advance, so he doesn't know what I'm going to be asking. I stalked your Facebook page, and I stole some photographs from your page. Most of them do have your signature on them, but not all. And Tom, can we get those up? Thank you. So these first 14 or so images, I'm just going to go through them fairly quickly. But these have all been taken since we went into lockdown, since quarantine. And I just am wondering, what have you discovered about your relationship to nature during this pandemic?
Well, Pamela, I think that the first thing is that, well, nature is everywhere, right? I'm an ornithologist by training, but a bird watcher by birth, really. And one of the things that I've spent a lot of my life as an ornithologist and bird watcher doing is traveling to far away or sometimes nearby places that that showed me birds in particularly wild settings. This last few weeks has really been a lesson for me in sort of settling, in sort of thinking about the small space that that I occupy in the suburbs of a southern town, of an already small southern town, and nature to personal scale is something that's been really critical, I think, in this process. So some of the pictures depict right before we really went into sort of the strong sequestering and stay-at-home movement. I made a couple of jaunts out to a nearby farm that I usually go to and snap some pictures. And then within the next week, we had gotten the state order really to batten down the hatches, so to speak. And so I spend most afternoons after Zooming, after the Zoom meetings, out in the backyard, really trying to compress my day and expand it at the same time into what passes through that backyard. So, Pamela, it's been a lesson really in patience, as it has been for a lot of us. It's been a lesson in persistence, sort of daily, and doing what we are supposed to do or that we need to do to stay safe and to help others around us stay safe. And it's been a lesson for me in that nature is everywhere. Certain things, and thinking about, for example, what's growing in the backyard, and that even outside of the ideal backyard, with everything being planted and native and local, and my backyard's not like that. There are exotic invasive species there that the birds love, and it's given me sort of this new perspective on looking at the world. So the pandemic has several lessons for us all, I'm sure, and it's going to continue to teach us lessons. But accepting nature where we are is a big part of that.
So a number of the pictures that I just flipped through are birds that are native to both your area and to our area. Some of them are already here. Some of them are on their way. And I did notice, as looking through your Facebook pictures, how much you had traveled right before the pandemic hit. And I'm just wondering if you're seeing different things about migration this year because you are settled in one place.
Wow, that's a great question, because most years, Pamela, this is when a lot of the travel begins for those of us kind of in the bird business. So with spring migration ramping up, bird festivals, one of the largest, the biggest week in American birding, which Kimberly Kaufman and Ken Kaufman run up in northwestern Ohio. I mean, that's a huge event, and it's a huge event not just for the birds, but for the local economy. Tens of thousands of people coming through small rural towns in northwestern Ohio. Some of us are going there. We're going to the Crane Festival out in Nebraska. We're thinking about Cape May, New Jersey. We're thinking about far-flung places like Homer, Alaska. We're thinking about all of these places, and suddenly we can't go there. And so now what I'm seeing, what I've been sort of forced to do because of the pandemic really, is to be still and to be in this small space. I had this pulse of local traveling right before the lockdown, and sitting in my backyard and really learning not just what the birds are, but learning who they are has been part of my exercise. So paying attention to the cardinals that come through the yard, and that while it may look on the surface like all cardinals are just red birds, really there's this tremendous variation between cardinals, between male cardinals, between female cardinals, between behaviors of individuals, or watching even the social behavior of these birds. So I'm learning, I feel like, my birds again in another way. And then as I get to know those super common birds that are there, the cardinals, the chickadees, the titmice, the downy woodpeckers, the robins, the white-throated sparrows, all of a sudden something new shows up. And that new bird that shows up, something like a great crested flycatcher, for example, or a rose-breasted grosbeak, these are birds that, while I'm sequestered in this small town, in this small backyard, all of a sudden you've got birds bringing the world to you. And so that's the difference. I've had to sit and be patient and wait and not chase. And that's sort of a different thing for me. I've slowed down some in the past few years, but going from sort of birder mode to bird watching mode to bird absorbing mode has really made a huge difference, I think, in the way that that I see birds.
That's a great answer. I've been showing these pictures. These last two pictures have been of blackbirds, and I think that you began to be a part of the social, media age with the 9 Rules of the Blackbirder, and when that went out on YouTube. I don't know if you could catch the audience in a little bit on the rules of the Blackbirder, and whether you think they've changed in the time since you wrote that piece. Are they still true? Are they more true?
Well, thanks for mentioning that. It was a piece that I wrote for Orion magazine a few years back, and I remember the morning that it dropped. I was actually in Baraboo, Wisconsin, and I was in Madison actually, and on my way to Baraboo later that day, and I got a call from a friend that said, "Have you seen what happened with this video that you did from the article?" And it had gone near viral at the time and later went viral. And it brought to my mind, Pamela, the importance of connecting culture to conservation, because those 9 rules that I wrote, for example, be prepared to be confused with the other blackbirder, or carry your binoculars in 3 or 4 forms of identification at all times. You'll need the binoculars to pick that tufted duck out of the flock of scaup and ringnecks. You'll need the photo IDs to convince the cops, FBI, Homeland Security, and the flashlight-toting security guard that you're not a terrorist or escaped convict. So those 9 rules that were written tongue-in-cheek, but written with the experience of having lived a good bit of this sarcasm, of this satire, really, when I wrote it, it was easy to write. I mean, I flipped it off in a few minutes, but then that other people saw not just the humor in it, but understood the gravity of it, brought to my mind the importance to really expand my conversations into places of social consciousness, and that who we are sometimes affects what we do. And so that 9 rules for the Black Bird Watcher, for me, were really kind of a turning point in helping others understand that my world might be impacted in different ways than their world might be impacted because of race or ethnicity or gender, non-gender designation, or several other factors. But I wanted people to understand that humanity is in the field of view when we're looking at birds, and with humanity being in the field of view, that we need to think about the human condition. So I remember, in fact, when I came to Rochester for that first stop on my book tour, that there was this amazing time that we spent talking about Rochester as an important place for the consideration of culture and conservation, that convergence that Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and that so many others, that the abolitionist movement had an important place in Rochester. So going to a place it's hard to watch birds without considering the importance of people and place in our history. So those 9 rules were important in that. So thanks for bringing that forward.
Absolutely. So Drew, can you see the photograph that I have up there right now?
I sure do. That's at Congaree National Park.
And if I'm not
East
mistaken, this is one of your favorite places.
Yeah, absolutely. That was on a rainy, foggy, late winter day, midweek actually, and I was in that park, and I think I saw one other person while I was there. It's if I'm not mistaken, around 18,000 acres of bottomland hardwood forest and some upland forest, but it's brownwater swamp on the Congaree River.
Drew,
What
hang on. You just got muted. Hang
place?
on. There you go. Now you're back.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Knowing that that place exists right outside of a major metropolitan area is a critical thing for me, because it's within reach. That's wildness that's within reach of a lot of people, of a diverse group of people in Colombia. So I go there frequently, hoping to be alone, hoping to experience scenes like this, and the birds that come along with it. But I'm also heartened when I go there that I'm increasingly likely to see more diverse peoples there enjoying nature sort of in their own way. So yeah, it's absolutely one of my favorite places because of the barred owls that are there. And I was actually listening to a barred owl as I took this picture, so that that was in the background as that picture was being taken. So one of my absolute favorite places. And the next picture is actually at one of my favorite places. That's Botany Bay Wildlife Management Area, excuse me, which is on Edisto Island, South Carolina, in Colleton County, down in the Ace Basin, which is an absolutely critical place because you go a little further down the road south towards Savannah and you cross the Combahee River, and you cross the place where Harriet Tubman, you cross the very river where she made her largest and most southernmost excursion, liberation of enslaved peoples. She liberated more than 700 peoples on that day. So Botany Bay is not too far away from that. But that's the Boneyard Beach there at Botany Bay. And again, I found myself the only person there as the sun rose.
You know, I noticed a recurring theme in a lot of your work. And if I flip here, this is of Montpelier, and I know you've been doing work there that I'd love for you to talk about a little bit. This is James Madison's Montpelier, and that and the Botany Bay thinking, but this idea that we can find hope in places that have difficult pasts. We are in a difficult place in our history. There are environmental justice issues that are coming up through this coronavirus that we're seeing. And I think that many of us are finding hope in nature, but I just wonder, because this has been a theme in your writing for a little bit now, in terms of difficult places and how we find hope, if you could just speak a little bit about that.
Well, again, spot on. Thank you. It's this is James Madison's Montpelier. So when we think about our nation, and as Americans, many of us are frequently thinking of, in different ways, our Constitution, and we're thinking about how that Constitution was framed. And here's a place where James Madison, the primary framer, was really sitting in his study at some point in time. And you see here the main house, but if you look to your right, you'll see those smaller buildings, and those are enslaved structures where enslaved people were living at the time. So you're looking here at history. You're looking at the place where so much of the Constitution was formulated, written, thought up, but then you're looking just off in that south yard, you're looking at a place where people would not benefit from that very document that was being drafted. So as Dr. Matthew Reeves, the archaeologist for Montpelier, often states, what lies beneath those grounds, not just in the south yard, but in the forests that surround Montpelier, is a history that can be recovered and stories told by artifact. But then there are human stories that connect with the stories of nature in those woods. And so telling those stories, Pamela, is important because I don't want us to think that at any point in time, really, we've been very far or not dependent on nature in some sense, whether it was by force and servitude as enslaved were, or whether it was by owning human beings in chattel slavery and essentially overlooking their humanity to draft the Constitution. Fortunately, part of the genius of the Constitution was that it is a malleable document, and so going forward, we learned better. Hopefully, we're doing better, but there's so far to go, especially in terms of environmental justice and thinking about equitable access and treatment in all sorts of ways. One of my mantras is same air, same water, same soil, same fate. And I think those ideas of equity across air, soil, water, and the fate of the earth really ought to be considered constitutionally. And so I write about these difficult places, from my home place to places in the South Carolina Low Country where rice grown by enslaved people made some of the richest people in the world, to James Madison's Montpelier, that I want those places, I want all the stories told, all the stories brought up. So that's what I'm all about now. And birds are frequently the conduit for those stories.
Yeah, it's birds are bringing us together in ways we didn't expect. And I moved to this next picture of a group of young, diverse people that you worked with sometime last year. And I use this really as a jumping off point. You've been very helpful with us as being a role model for our urban ecologist program, meeting with them virtually, showing people that doesn't matter what your skin tone is, everybody has a place in nature and needs to have a place in nature, along with a place at the table for decision making. And I wonder if you're seeing, I'm going to probably get myself in some trouble here. Birding in many respects is seen as something that well-to-do white people do.
Yeah.
And yet birds, as we do things like the City Nature Challenge and getting people more involved with citizen science and eBird, birds seem to be able to bring people together in new ways. And I wonder how this downtime through the quarantine, through coronavirus, might be bringing more people together to the conversation.
Yeah, well, this is a group actually in Alabama. We were doing a swallow-tailed kite search and so many other great birds that are in the black belt of Alabama. Black belt refers to the soils there, but it also refers sociologically to the populace, that there's a large population of rural Black landowners there that are beginning to see birds in a different way. Swallowtail kites and scissortail flycatchers and dickcissels and all of the birds that come along with that region that's really prairie in central Alabama. So, this whole idea of birds transcending who we are is an important thing, that as we watch birds and we learn not just what they are, but who they are, we can sort of focus on other beings, on the care of other beings, whether it's the red of a cardinal or the golden of a prothonotary warbler or the brown of a white-throated sparrow, that we can focus on those hues And there's some transcendence, I think, in that singular focus on the bird that's in our binocular view. But one of the things I always want to encourage people to do, Pamela, is to take their binoculars down and to see the world around them. And if you take your binoculars down and you can look and see the world around you, then you see the beauty of the birds, but you also see the landscapes. And you see the good in the landscape, but hopefully you also see the bad. You see the injustice, you see poor housing, you may see pollution, you may see dirty water. And the birds are somehow persisting through some of this. They're also suffering in it. And in thinking about that survival versus the thrival, I think it gives us an opportunity to have birds show us the way. We can talk about that old cliche that of canaries in the coal mine,
Right.
of those birds that didn't sing when things got bad. Well, I think we can recognize some of that now. So you're right in that birds are transcendent in that way. And so as people are sequestered where they may look out in their backyards, or they may look out of their apartment windows and they see birds, whether it's pigeons flying through canyons of concrete and rivers of asphalt, or whether it's looking into your backyard and seeing a rose-breasted grosbeak or a robin hopping across, hunting for earthworms. Birds bring us the world, and they share songs with us for no cost. The only thing that they ask is for a clean environment. They ask us to take care of the earth, I think. And I think that's the least that we can do for the beauty and the song that they give us as gifts on a daily basis. So that's the transcendence. Birds' wings take them to places that we can't go right now. They offer us opportunities to see freedom, as they have freedom and choice as they have for people for millennia. So I think we're back to some basics now, Pamela, that will hopefully bring an appreciation of birds back to this level of envy, of worship, in some ways, of meditation, that they can tell us things about ourselves that perhaps we were forgetting.
Thank you. That was really beautiful. Hey, Tom, can we take it back to show Drew's home office? We had some questions early on about where Drew is and how cool his office is. So I want to make sure that people could see what he calls the thicket.
Yeah, this is the thicket. So it's sort of an ornithological hoarder's delight. I like to say that it's bordering on hoarding, and but it's where I come to do a lot of thinking. It's only 27 steps the last time I counted, with a cup of coffee in my hand and my some books, but it's full of me, really, and it represents, in being a thicket, a place that I can escape to, a place that I'm comfortable in, much as a sparrow might be comfortable in its thicket. I'm comfortable in this thicket by all of the things that others may not appreciate, that are fully me. And so thanks for thanks for noticing.
We've had a couple of people ask how they can get your book, and I will say that it is available at the zoo shop. When we reopen, we always carry the book, and it is also available, of course, on Amazon.com. So, Drew, is that, that last image I showed of you in the rear view mirror, is there anything you want to close with, thinking about those reflections on this time? kind of a small question there.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Pamela, and thanks to Tom Snyder, who I know is running things in the background. But the importance of the work that you guys do at Seneca Park Zoo, not only in conservation of non-human beings, but really connecting humans to nature in that place. And I know that's compromised right now, but I want people to understand that the work of certified zoological parks goes far beyond what you see when you visit. And so you guys have done so much on so many days beyond Earth Day that you've made every day Earth Day. And so I appreciate that association. And the reflection really personally is that, you know, as you watch birds, and for people who may be beginning bird watching, focus on a bird. You don't even have to know the name of that bird. You don't have to identify it correctly every single time, but watch that bird and let your life sort of flow through it and be transformed when a bird flies or when it sings. And when a bird wakes you up in the morning, be thankful for full breath, and be hopeful that as you fall asleep that night and the birds fall asleep in their own thickets, that we'll awake to a better world the next morning. So thank you for letting me come in and talk on this 50th anniversary of Earth Day, Pamela. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Drew, so much for being a part of our Earth Day celebration. Really appreciate your time. Appreciate all of those who took some time to celebrate Earth Day with us. And let's go plant some trees. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, y'all.